How you doing? Jim Fisher for the Third Way, not left, not right, America's Third Way, and this is Anarchy Part 2. So, as I was just explaining about Anarco-Capitalism, I kind of wanted to expand on the subject a little bit. Another aspect of Anarco-Capitalism that would need to be handled would be the defense. And, people would say, well, Jim, you got to have a military. That's one of the, even in a libertarian society, that's one of the legitimate functions of government is the military. And as I stand today as a libertarian, I would agree with that statement. I have no problem with the government providing a military, but I am open to the idea of anarcho-capitalism, and I want to give you another example of how this function of the military would work in an anarcho-capital society. Where you say, well, if we're just relying on capitalism and companies to go after profit, how would they be any military? One of the ways would be, picture a building like the Prudential Building or all the skyscrapers in the city. Each one of those building owners has an insurance policy. That insurance policy covers them for earthquakes, for any type of natural disaster, for unnatural disasters. Like when the planes went into the World Trade Centers, there was an insurance policy that covered the owner of that building. So, in an anarcho-capital society where they know there is no military, the insurance company would have to pick up that function. Let's say the Prudential Building is insured for, $20 billion or whatever it would cost to replace that. The insurance company knows there's no military. They know there's a possibility of attack either by planes or by another country's ground forces, what have you. Another country sees us as an anarcho-capitalist country with no military. Guess what? They're coming to invade, right? Well, the insurance companies would know that, and they would be the ones that are responsible. If this building gets captured by another country, they would have to pay the owners of that building $20 billion. They wouldn't want to do that. So they may say, you know what? Let's invest $500 million in protecting this building so that if we get attacked, we will be able to defend this building. And so they wouldn't hire a standing army. They would hire very high-tech weaponry to protect that building. Maybe they'd own a couple jets and have a couple contracted jet fighters, or they would hire a mercenary-style company that would only provide their needs when attacked. They would have a means to protect that building. And every major city in our country would have insurance policies on them. They do have insurance policies on them, except now these insurance companies would have to handle this means of defense. And it doesn't just apply to big buildings. It applies to big companies. It applies to anybody that has a lot to lose, has a lot to lose. So they got to protect it. And so they would be worried about occupying forces coming and taking that building. And so you would have tons of small militaries that in collaboration would defend the United States. This would happen in an anarcho-capital society. It would have to happen, right? Or we would be taken over. So not, every single aspect that the government, every single function the government provides could be done in an anarcho-capital society. Like the highways. Think of the highways. Well, today they're free and I can drive on the highway. Yeah, just like I am right now. I'm actually moving at 3 miles an hour right now, and I do every day for the whole expressway. If that was completely privatized, if somebody owned this expressway, they would and anybody could buy this land. somebody would own a competing expressway, and they would have motivation to get you to pay, whether it be through a fast pass toll or however they do it. They could get you to pay to travel on their expressway, and there would be competition for your traveling needs. And as long as there's competition, they're going to figure out how to get you from point A to point B faster, because they know you might be willing to pay a little more for it. There is actually private expressways in California. They kind of work like a zipper lane, but you've got to pay for it. And certain people will pay for these zipper lanes because they need to get from point A to point B faster. They can't afford to sit in traffic. Maybe people that own big businesses that too much of their days can't be spent in traffic, or even for the everyday Joe that sits in traffic every day that can't afford to use that zipper lane. On Tuesday he may have a wedding he's got to get to, so just that day he's going to use the zipper lane. Wouldn't you rather have the option? Maybe there'd be one highway that has higher traffic and isn't maintained, and a secondary one that's more expensive that has no traffic. Wouldn't you want the option? And you think, well, I don't want to pay for my travel. Right now I don't pay anything. Well, guess what? You do pay. You pay actually way more than you would in an anarcho-capitalist society, because, like I said in part 1, today they have no means or measurement of success. And that's why I sit in traffic every day. In an anarcho-capitalist society, they would. And that is competing for your dollar bill. That would be their measurement of success. And so you would get to vote on which one is better, or which roads you'll use. And they would be alternate routes. Today, the government has a monopoly. They don't have to provide you alternate routes. If in a free market society, there would be motivation to build that alternate route, and the profit would be there because people would be willing to pay for it. And you wouldn't be paying any taxes at all. So you would have much more income disposable to pay for these things. So to think, well, I'm not paying for it today, I don't want to pay for it in an anarcho-capitalist society. You are paying for it today, and you're paying much more than it would cost you in an anarchist society. So, try to use your imagination on how this would work. And it would work. Not only would it work, you would have the ultimate freedom. There would be no FDA to tell you you can't buy this medicine when you come down with cancer and there's a new medicine that comes out. You would be able to, maybe it's experimental, but shouldn't you be able to judge the risk of using it versus the risk of not using it for your own? How can a bureaucrat from Washington, D.C. decide for you which risk is more important, the risk of not using it or the risk of using it? All he's worried about is his career. You're worried about your cancer and you're going to die in 6 months. Maybe your risk of using it, even if it's a highly controversial drug, is very low if you're going to die in 6 months, right? How much risk do you really have? Well, the risk to that bureaucrat, if he approves it, is extremely high. Because let's say he approves it and it saves 1,000 people, but it kills 5. The only thing that's going to make the newspaper is the 5 that it killed, and his career is going to get hurt. That's what he's worried about. Well, maybe if you've got cancer and you're going to die in 6 months, that 5 out of 1,000 is an acceptable risk to you. And they would be an independent contractor, or not a contractor, but an independent company that would fulfill that role of quality assurance, where you could get the information that you need. You would have to pay for it, but don't think you're not paying for the FDA today. You are. Again, there would be no taxes, so you would have the money to directly pay for the exact services you need. For a guy that's healthy all his life and never needs any medication, he's paying for the FDA. For a guy that's full of medications, not only is he paying for the FDA, but now he's paying the FDA to prevent him from being able to get medicine that he may need. So I think that's enough for this segment. I'm going to talk a little bit more about anarcho-capitalism. I guess there'll be a part 3 at least. Jim Fisher signing off for the moment. For the third way, not left, not right, America's third way, libertarianism.